You know, the type of guys that would normally shoot something big but fall in love with a scenario, there is no budget. But they will want to do it because those guys are driven by passion first. Do we want them to make trade-off in the quality of equipment they use or the image they will generate? No, and that's why we did this product.
CineD, your digital cinema tech resource, supported by B&H and CVP.
Welcome everybody to this CineD interview. I'm very excited to talk to Christophe Casanave from ZEISS about their new Nano Primes that were just announced. How are you, Christophe?
I'm doing good. All good.
You're good? Okay. You guys actually kept this very much under wraps. Nobody knew about this. We were lucky enough to have them early on to test. A completely new series of lenses from ZEISS. What can you tell me about the Nano Primes?
Yeah, the Nano Primes is a fully new lens family designed especially for mirrorless cinema camera. So mirrorless, if you think about this, all cinema cameras are mirrorless because it's a long time there is no mirror anymore. But I would say all the cameras a bit more technical with a short flange focal. That's we believe that this brings major benefits, and we decided to take this seriously. While until now, the majority of the lenses for mirrorless or short flange were more or less adapted lenses from 52 millimeter flange to short flange. So this time we made an optical design completely 100% for this type of camera.
So what makes the Nano Primes so special? You said those are specifically newly designed, all of them, as opposed to the older generations that were originally made for cameras with mirrors. They look similar to the CP3s, but they are a little bit smaller. Why did it make sense to make a completely new line with every new lens, completely new calculated?
Yeah, so exactly because you just mentioned it, they look similar, but they are not at all. So inside you have completely new optic made from the ground. And they look similar if you compare a CP3 with a PL mount with this lens. Then you don't see how much smaller they are. But in fact, if you would take an E-mount, you would have an additional tube that would be much longer for the CP3. So basically, we decided that we want to use the potential of having this, let's say, technique of making a lens with short flange, because we knew from the past, from our experience, that you can design lenses that are much, much smaller by keeping the same spec. And in fact, the specs are even better because they are all T1.5 and still they are smaller than the equivalent CP3. So basically using the whole potential of those more or less spec from the camera, we are able to design lenses that are faster with a more modern optic, a more complex optic than, for example, the CP3, but still in a very small and lightweight package.
You already mentioned that they are all T1.5, but I think we have to start by saying which focal lengths are available. I mean, we have them here. It's 18, 24, 35, which is actually just filming me, and I think you are right now being filmed by the 75. Then the 50, the 75, and the 100 millimeters, actually that one. I'm quite amazed that it's possible to make an 18 and an 100, particularly with T1.5, which is very fast for a wide angle and a telephoto lens. How is that possible, and why didn't we have this before already?
It's all because of the flange. So basically you can do completely different designs. It doesn't help so much for all the type of focals. Typically, the more the focal is near to the value of this, flange focal, the simpler you can make designs, right? Because then you can use designs that are more or less symmetrical. The big issue you have if you have lenses Wide-angle lenses, for example, in the past for PL mount, for example, you have to make a very strong retrofocus lens, which basically means you need to use much more lens elements to achieve the same result. While using the whole potential of the short flange, you can make, especially for the wide angle, less complex lenses, right? For the telephoto, you will just win a couple of millimeters, but still you would still have the same type of construction. But this is exactly for the wide angle, the 18 millimeter. If you think 18 millimeter 1.5 with 95 millimeter front diameter, and with the lengths that you can see now on your image, it's really something you could not do if we would design the lens with a let's say PL camera in mind. And we decided that the market is big enough to spend the effort and to spend our R&D resources designing a dedicated Cine lens line for this type of cameras.
Very interesting. I wasn't aware that it's that much dependent on the actual flange distance, meaning that having that short flange distance for an E-mount will give you this added ability to actually have faster T-stops. I never thought about that, but of course it makes total sense.
It doesn't give me the ability to have a faster T-stop. Sorry, Nino, that doesn't give the ability to have a faster T-stop, but because you can make simpler design, then by increasing the complexity of the design, you can have still a faster T-stop, but still with a very small and compact design. This is it. So basically, because for a standard, let's say T-stop, you would need less, then you can afford spending more doing a faster lens, which you could not do if you do a lens meant for a standard camera.
Interesting, but that already answers the question why there is no PL mount version of this. But let's stay on the subject of the lens mount. You decided to start with the E-mount, but I saw in the preliminary presentation already that these are interchangeable lens mount lenses. So what other lens mounts can people expect in the future?
So as you mentioned, we prepared everything to be able to have an interchangeable mount. So and it's very easy. The mount is built in a very simple way, and the mount is interchangeable with the electronic. So there is electronic in the mount. If you want to change the mount, you unscrew 4 screws. There are pogo pins. On the other mount, there will be also the equivalent pads, and you just put the new mount. Now, everything is ready to add additional mounts, but we have no, I would say, guaranteed timeline and mounts that we can mention today. So we prepared everything, and now we are in discussion to add additional mounts. They will come, that's for sure, but I don't want to give any more detail today.
But of course, it's relevant for users to know that they will be able to adapt them to other manufacturers' cameras as well. And is it already early enough to say if that will be user interchangeable, or is it something that a ZEISS service center will have to do?
It will be user interchangeable. So 4 screws, you can shim it on your own, and that's it. Super easy. Easier than the CP3. For those who know CP3 and CP2, it's even easier than CP3 and CP2.
That's great, also especially considering that you have those electronic connections. We saw already on our, right now I'm being filmed by an FX9 with the 35mm Nano Prime, and we saw that there is a T-stop that is shown in the camera, so we already see that electronic connection working, which also leads me to the next question. With the CP3s, there is a normal CP3 version and there is the XD version, which is this extended data to get lens data out of the lens. Now, it seems like all of this is now coming through the mount. What can you tell me about that and its advantages?
Yes. So basically, we designed the lens specifically for the camera for which they are intended to be used with. So E-mount, Sony cameras. So basically what you want is that the lens is communicating with the Sony camera with the language of the Sony camera, which is a, let's say, IT protocol or electronic protocol defined by Sony. And we wanted our lens to communicate the best way with this camera. And you mentioned it, on your FX9, you will see the T-stop, you will see the focus distance, you will see the focal, all the information about the lens. So that's why we decided that we implement the E-mount protocol and not the XD version, which is basically based on the Cook/I protocol. So basically the lens will communicate with all E-mount cameras. On the day where we do another mount, the lens will also be able to communicate with the camera that we will design the mount for. This is foreseen because the whole intelligence, the whole electronic is in the mount. So basically the lens will be able to communicate with any camera it's made for.
Very interesting. So, of course, I mean, like, I guess the whole XD protocol by Cook was originally developed to give some electronic ability to PL lenses, which are per se kind of dumb lenses, right? Because there is no communication with the PL mount because it's such an old mount. And of course, I mean, you are taking it to a more modern level if you talk with through the lens mount itself, and also much simpler to use for the everyday user, I guess.
Exactly. And if I may add something into this, so in extended data is the Cook/I protocol, the full Cook/I protocol, plus we add distortion, vignetting, and the position of the the nodal point or the no parallax point. It's also given by this. These are elements that are not foreseen in the E-mount protocol, but those lenses are part of a bigger ZEISS ecosystem in which we have now our CineCraft. So basically, on the day where those lenses will be launched and announced and also available for users, they will be on CineCraft service, and you will get exactly the same benefit as if you would be using an XD lens, because you will be able to grab the distortion data, shading data from the CineCraft online service. And if you use CineCraft Scenario camera tracking system from ZEISS, you will also be able to get all of those distortion data to your CineCraft Scenario through exactly this service, so that the Nano Prime, together with a Sony camera and a CineCraft Scenario, will make the whole system plug and play and super easy to set up and super easy to use. So we think really in a ZEISS ecosystem, those lenses will fit perfectly to other elements of the ZEISS, let's say, VFX ecosystem.
Okay, wow. So this should make VFX acquisition of images actually much more, like user-friendly in a way.
User-friendly and affordable. It's not, VFX is not anymore something for rich people and big productions, but with a Sony FX6, Nano Prime, and then using some service from ZEISS and standard tools, you'll be able to facilitate and accelerate your whole pipeline.
Great. Let's move on to talk about the look that these lenses produce. How would you describe it compared to other existing lines in the ZEISS lineup, the CP3s, but also the Supremes, but also in general in terms of characteristics?
Mm-hmm. So, very good question, because it's always very subjective to talk about the look, and my experience is that you can describe the look as long as you want, exactly like a wine, but at the end people will see something they want to see or something different. But I'll try. It's a very difficult exercise, so please pardon me if it doesn't fit what you see at the end. In fact, our idea was to have a lens which is small and also quite affordable, that would go in the same kind of direction as the Supreme Primes. So we wanted to, because we tested this look, it's a look that people love. Supreme Primes are so in love by many DOPs, used on so many productions, being it film or feature film, but mainly also Netflix productions, streaming productions, and always the same feedback was, it's a look that's not too clinical, as we were used from ZEISS in the past, but it's also no vintage look. So it's something that's quite versatile, and we wanted to find again this versatility into the Nano Primes. And one of the reasons for us to try to have something that is quite equivalent, which is a risk, because of course it's a lens that's intended more for, let's say, smaller film production. But the reason was that you want to shoot with the Supreme, but perhaps you don't have the budget for this, depending on what you are shooting. So you're used to your Supremes, you're used to this kind of versatility, to this kind of look, and suddenly your next project has a lower budget. Or you have 2 or 3 cameras on the set, and the A camera you have a Supreme, but the budget doesn't give you the possibility to have the same type of lens on big camera. So what do? It's very complex. So we wanted to have something that is quite interchangeable, that will match quite well, so that when I'm used to my Supremes, I'll find another solution that will fit perhaps the size of the budget. Or even if the budget is the same. Let's imagine you shoot a film where you have some sequences in which you want to be more mobile. Let's say in a plane, in a car. Why do you need to trade off the look? So we wanted to have something that matched quite well. Of course, it will never be 100% the same look, because there are some technical constraints, but we tried really to go in terms of sharpness, in terms of contrast, in terms of color rendition, to go more in the direction of what we did with the Supreme. So that's basically how I would describe it. And the big difference with the CP3 is, of course, the aperture or the T-stop. With T1.5, you have much more freedom, especially to separate basically your main subject from the background, because one T-stop more provides you a much shallower depth of field. So it's something you could not have, and even for some focals, thinking about the 18mm, it's 2 T-stop faster than the CP3, and especially for wide angle, having 1.5, suddenly you can really create a blurry background with a wide angle, which is not given with a CP3, for example, to be very honest. So that's the biggest difference.
Actually, yes, I have to completely agree so far. For me also, as a cinematographer, it was often a problem to not have a fast wide-angle cinema lens, which is why very often I had to resort to a photo lens that is fast. And it's really great to have a T1.5 18mm now, of course, especially on gimbal and stuff like that, where it's really important to have a wide angle, but also a fast one. And that's going to make a lot of things easier. In general, I mean, to have a whole line of lenses that start with the same fast T-stop is something that is still unfortunately not the standard, and that's quite amazing. But let's talk about the consistency. I mean, one of the things CP2s, CP3s, for very many years I worked with CP2s. I have a set of CP2s and I think 1 or 2 CP3s. They're great, but sometimes some of those focal lengths look a little bit different than others, which I guess maybe you can explain has a historical reason of how they were made. But these ones seem very consistent. I mean, we have done the technical tests already, and they are very sharp corner to corner. I mean, people will see in our review that this looks great. Their breathing is perfect. I mean, it's very controlled, the focus breathing. Also chromatic aberration, I think, looks quite good. And I was really surprised that especially the wider lenses and the long focal lengths, which often are a little bit of a problem with some lineups, perform perfectly even at T1.5. We didn't see much of a difference in terms of sharpness when they're wide open. But maybe you can just put that into perspective because a lot of people, I think you talked a lot about the Supremes and you mentioned the CP3s, but I think a lot of people who are looking to invest in those are probably owner operators. Maybe some of them, like the new Sony Burano owners that are going to get their camera quite soon, which these lenses are a great fit for. But I think the consistency in the look is something that is really important. And maybe you can just talk about how that changed from the CP3s.
Yeah, I mean, the big reason is because we designed them purposely and at the same time and with the same team. The CP3, these are lenses that are fantastic, really fantastic, but they were designed at a point in time where you didn't have the same, because the CP3s are, let's say, a major improvement compared with the CP2, but they kept almost the same optic. We just changed the 18mm. We changed a bit of coatings to make it better especially for high dynamic range. But in fact, these are designs that were made, let's say, in the beginning 2000s. So you didn't have the same capability to simulate, to compute everything. You did something, you had some curves, and then you were able to see, and then you build a prototype, you build a second prototype. It was approximately like this. And you would not like to do 10 different prototypes because it would take ages to do this. Nowadays, thanks to the big progress in computing power and capabilities and all these algorithms that our guys are developing for the simulating software, you are able to design on a computer the full lens line, test it on the computer, and then make 10 cycles if you want until they match perfectly. So I would say it's very technically driven and basically based on the fact that we have made major progress in that sense, and also we have the right focus on this. So typically what we did here is we started with one focal, which was our reference, and then we designed all the other around, and we made so many iterations on the computer until they all would reach something that matched quite well. And that's how we were able to match it. Because matching is super important in cinema, consistency is super important, and that's what we wanted to offer. And actually we offer this in the Supremes, we offer this in the Radiance as well. So we are able to do this, but of course CP3 is another generation.
No, it's interesting because it's something that a user won't think about, actually the manufacturing process, that not the lens, not the product itself is also more modern. It's also because the manufacturing process has now the ability to do things differently than 10, 15, 20 years ago. And as you said, like designing them at the same time, of course, makes a huge difference, because then you are able to make them look very consistent. I personally love the fact that there's a 75mm now. I think it's a much better focal length in practical use than an 85, because it's like it sits right in between the 50 and the 100mm. But that also leads me to the next question. I'm sure there are additional focal lengths planned. Can you say anything about future focal lengths yet?
Yeah, I mean, the answer to your question is also linked to your remark that there is a 75. So basically, we want to offer one set which I would say match the needs of 95% of the user. So typically, of course, if you go for the Supremes, you have 14 focals because you go on big production and the guys will take everything they can. They can afford renting 14 focals for 2 months or 3 months. It's okay. But here we made those lenses with, let's say, smaller film production in our mind. Owner operator, if you want, even if I'm not 100% sure, because owner operator would more or less link to one single person, but typically these are small production company that operate 2 to 3, 4 people, and they will not be able to, and they will not need 14 focals. So we try to find a smart way to select the focals so that with those 6 lenses, they have what they need. And in a first step, that's what we offer. We are open to any other, let's say, needs, but currently our target was really to have something very well, staggered so that they have what they need. So currently this is it, and this is also the way we promote the series, and we will sell the series so that you will be able to acquire the 6 focals packed in the transport case. This is the standard way to do. We don't recommend you to select your focals. If you want, you can. It's possible, but we really recommend you and we encourage you to take the 6. Then you have all you need for, let's say, 99% of what you need to shoot.
I agree about your comment about the owner-operator often not being one person. I see, or we see a industry trend, especially in the commercials fields, of owner-led production companies that are really led by DPs, right? I mean, we see everywhere, we see more and more production companies that really have a staff behind them that are led by the creatives, often the DPs, sometimes the directors, and there's a couple of people using the gear, but they own the gear. They don't really rent much, and but already make very high-end productions. And we see that, especially the commercial market changing, where it used to be like production company with producers and no creative people, and they would just hire in the creatives and hire all the gear, and now it's more like an agency thing almost, like they become like the creative agency and the production company in one, which is great, I think, because the scripts are a little bit closer to the product actually, when the creative people are the ones that actually own the gear. And I think it's a good fit for those. And I mean, that's the same target group where the Sony Burano goes in, for example, which is, like a mini Venice, if you will. And I'm sure those are a really great fit. So I totally agree with you. And I think also for rentals, I mean, it will be interesting, because that leads me to my final question. Why did you select the E-mount to start with? Is that because of the market penetration of Sony cameras?
I think the E-mount, just think about the cinema lineup of Sony. First of all, we got some information, not from Sony directly, but it's going around, floating around. Sony takes E-mount seriously for cinema. Okay? So they believe E-mount is a serious cinema mount. We all know that there is some flaws because of the stability, but they worked on it, and it works. Of course, if you put a 4 kilo lens, it will not be stable enough, but with a lens in this size, it will work perfectly. They have a lock for the mount, works perfectly. So they take it seriously. Currently, until now, every lens line that were made for E-mount or for mirrorless were more adapted lenses. So nobody took it really seriously. And this idea came like 5 years ago, as there was still not so many E-mount camera, but the first signs were here I thought we need to take E-mount seriously, and we need to take mirrorless seriously because it brings big benefits. So let's do the things right, take more time, but do the things right. So we said, let's do a lineup for E-mount. And nowadays, if you think about the E-mount, it's the Venice 2. It's the Venice 1 with Rialto or without Rialto, right? It's the Burano, it's the FX9, it's FX6, and even if it's FX3. So you have such a lineup which brings also consistency. So imagine you are a DP and you shoot something bigger, and you shoot on a Venice, and then you need to have a scene which is in a car. In the past, you would have needed to take some special cameras with a look completely different, 2/3 inch, with a lens that match nowhere. Now, you can have the same technology with some, of course, some trade-off. You have the same technology, the same look. And that's fantastic. We needed to support this. We want to be there. And we want to put the sign, hey guys, this is the way. And to the other camera manufacturers, do the same. That's fantastic. Serve the whole palette of applications, because at the end, sometimes it's even the same DOP. Right? You have one project, except you are just shooting blockbuster all the time and you are so big that you can live only from this. But one project has more budget than the other. Do you want to change everything? Do you want to make trade-off in the way you work? No. And we want to offer a product that allows people not to make trade-off on the day where they have a bit less budget than usually.
I totally agree. I mean, it reminds me of an interview that I saw with the director of The Creator, which was shot by Greg Fraser and Oren Sofer on the FX3. And that is a blockbuster movie. And the director said they gave him the choice. Either you have a very small amount of shooting days with a big crew in a studio, or he said, can I just take this money and make my crew much smaller and travel around the world and use a small camera? And they said, well, if you don't use more money, you can do that. So he decided to shoot on the FX3. And it's, I think it became arguably a really, really great science fiction movie with lots of VFX in real locations on a small camera. And I think the same is true with, a lot of big TPs are only now realizing that they can go much smaller, because very often you have smaller versions of the cameras they already own with the same sensor. And I think it started, in the higher end with the Arri Alexa. When they introduced the Alexa Mini, I remember talking to somebody from Arri, is like, what is the target audience for this? And they said, well, for drones and gimbals, B camera, C camera shots. And I said, no, everybody's going to want to use this as an A camera because it's just much more flexible. And that's exactly what happened. It's been their most successful camera. I'm sure it's going to be the same for the Burano. I already see a lot of high-end DPs use that instead of the Venice 2 for a lot of things. Yes, there are some trade-offs, but they're not that many, and they're not as many as there used to be. And I think, that will carry along with the lenses as well. I mean, just having the ability to have more affordable lenses that look very close to your higher-end Supremes is, of course, great. And I think it will just continue to democratize the process. And we all know, there's more productions being done than ever before with all the streaming giants still producing a lot despite the economic downturn. But, if you compare it to 10 years ago, it's just we probably shoot 3 or 4 times as much. And there is definitely a need for that.
Exactly. So perhaps a short comment on my side. I talked to so many very good DPs that accepted some scenario, some film, some projects where they were almost not paid just because they loved the scenario. There are so many of those. The type of guys that would normally shoot something big but fall in love with a scenario, there is no budget. But they will want to do it because those guys are driven by passion first. And do we want them to make trade-off? in the quality of equipment they use or the image they will generate? No, and that's why we did this product. Also for them, of course, for also the, let's say, owner, operator or small companies, but also to help whoever needs one time to have a product that will make the job, that will have a good look, that will make no trade-off on the optics, but still allow me to serve a project with a bit lower budget. And I think it was really the important message here.
That's a very, very nice way of ending this interview, Christophe. Thank you very much. Just one last question. Going back to the lenses for a second, what is the availability? Are they shipping already? I mean, when people see this video, it's the day of the launch. When are they shipping? And what is the price of the individual lens and maybe the whole lens package? I know it's a suggested retail price, but maybe you can give some information on that.
So the shipment will start beginning of May, right? And they will ship in decent amount. So whoever places an order will not have to wait long for delivery. So we are foreseeing a good amount for this. The pricing is very, very simple. The package of 6 lenses, including the transport case, the very light Peli case, will be 23,000 euro, all inclusive, of course without VAT. And if you want to buy them separately, it's possible. The price varies a bit for the focals, but you can calculate around 10% more if you buy them individually than if you buy the full set of 6 lenses, including Peli case. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Christophe. I think we'll wrap it up here. By the time people watch this interview, they can already also go to our channel to watch a hands-on first look review that I shot with those lenses and share my thoughts about them in a more scripted way than this interview. But take a look what they look like. And yeah, good luck with the lenses. And I'm sure we will see a lot of productions with them in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you.